This is something I've talked about on stream quite a bit, but I just want to have a dedicated rant and yapping session about it. Fair warning, I'm very congested today, so I'm sounding like Eeyore with a broken nose. Mid. The fifth state of matter. Solid, liquid, gas, plasma, mid. If something or someone is described as mid, it means it's average or mediocre. Really, it means bland more than anything. It's mainly used as an insult. And usually, if something's being called mid, it's worse than dog shit. And I'll be honest, I just don't get why it's used as like a huge insult. When I was growing up, I would have given anything in the world to be average. Average height, average looking, like Jesus Christ. To be average would have been a blessing from the Lord Almighty himself. But today, if anything is average, people hate it. Like, it's irredeemably bad to a lot of people if something is just average or mediocre. And I think that sucks. Not trying to be the old man shaking his fist on the front line or anything, but I just really think that is some turbo ass cheeks. You can't just say, like, it was okay. You can't just be like, yeah, it was alright. In the current climate of things, no matter what it is, even like the most trivial entertainment, like a show, you either have to love it or hate it. It has to be extreme. I just don't really like that at all. And people seem to get mad if anyone tries to say that something's either not the best thing they've ever seen or played, or is not the worst thing they've ever seen or played. If you just try and say, like, yeah, I mean, it's not great and it's not bad, it's just a forgettable experience, people don't like to hear that. Like, it feels like everything has to be combative, where it's, you're either with us or against us. You either love it, you either hate it, and there's no in between, so choose a side. I don't understand why everything has to be a battlefield, even an opinion on, like, fucking trivial entertainment properties, like games or movies or anime or some shit like that. It's so weird. There are things that are just mediocre, and that's not a crime. Like, there's nothing wrong with things that are just average, or even a little below average, or slightly above average. All just being roped into this wonderful nexus of mid. Of course, there is a point of no return when it comes to mediocrity, though. This force of nature has got a lot of nuance to it. If there's something that is so painfully average, so safe, so boring, so bland, like Raisin Bran of entertainment properties, then it becomes much worse than if it had just been bad. Because there is something called so bad it's good. One of my favorite phenomenons. I love dog shit media. Some of my favorite movies, like Moonfall, are objectively horrible movies. And I love them because they are so bad they're good. But I have never had a movie or a game that I played that is so average that I fall in love with it. There is a point where a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 game is so boring that it's much more miserable to experience than something that's like a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10, you know what I mean? So there is definitely like some wiggle room here. But overall, when something is mid, I don't view it as like, something not worth experiencing at all, like this super negative thing. To me, I've just always viewed it as, oh, okay, so this would be just kind of average. Kind of just like, okay, maybe I'll enjoy it for a little bit and not think about it ever again. You know what I mean? The reason that I'm talking about this, what brought it up, is I finished a No Tria last night, and I posted a video today, which is just like my whole playthrough condensed into 2 hours. It's a new Souls-like game, and it is the very definition, a textbook example of mid. It's janky. It's unpolished, feels unfinished at points. There is no enemy variety at all, or weapon variety for that matter. There's only like 4 unique enemies in the whole game. There's more variety in the wrinkles on my nutsack than there is in Anotria's enemies. A lot of the bosses just reuse the exact same moveset. Most of the bosses are just normal enemies with a larger health bar. There's a lot of flaws with the game. There is some things to like about it though. The aesthetic is nice. The combat sometimes when it's working feels good. The mass system has a lot of potential if they explore that further with their upcoming games. This is also the company's first game, and it's an overall decent attempt at a Souls-like. It is right down the middle of being an average Souls-like slop. It is nothing special. It's not atrocious, like a lot of people are preaching that it is, saying that it is an unplayable pile of garbage, though there is one game-breaking bug in it that I'm aware of where sometimes some players aren't getting a ladder that spawns at the end of the game, meaning they can't finish the game. You can't restart the game or anything, it just never spawns if you get unlucky, so you have to redo the entire game starting with a new character. That's a huge problem. That's an unforgivable problem. I agree with that sentiment. But when the game works, if you got lucky and got to finish the game, it's an okay experience. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I posted that video, and I said the initial title was, "This new Souls game isn't as bad as everyone's saying," because everyone was saying that this is up there with like some of the super stinkers of the industry, like the original Lords of the Fallen game, stuff like that. And that's just super exaggeratory. It's not that bad. It's not good. It's not bad. It's mid. And when I had that as a title, a lot of the comments were getting mad at me saying I was clickbaiting them, saying, Charles literally says in the video that it's mid, yet he says it's not as bad as people are saying in the title. What the fuck is this? Why is he lying? There was no fucking fibs there. There was no falsehoods. The game isn't as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. It's just a mediocre game. And for a studio's first attempt at a Souls-like, it's pretty decent in that regard. But overall, it's just a mediocre mid game. Like, it's not the worst game ever. At all. It's not. So, yeah, I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people are saying that it is. I changed the title to mid because maybe that's more explanatory, but I don't view it as a super negative thing for something to be mid. Like I said, there is some wiggle room there where some things are just so mid that they're much worse than things that are objectively stinkier than them. But when it comes to things like Anotria, I mean it in the truest sense of the word. It is just an average game. It's got flaws, it's got some things to like. I don't see why anyone would fall in love with it, and I don't see why anyone would hate it. Like, it really just feels like one of those things where most people are going to be like, alright, well that wasn't for me. Or, alright, well that was okay, worth finishing, I guess. And it's not going to be strong feeling, or it shouldn't be strong feelings one way or the other. It's just a mediocre game. And it also seems like if someone doesn't love something, they feel guilty if they're just lukewarm on it, so then they go the opposite direction, they let the pendulum swing the other way, so then they convince themselves that they actually hated it. And I saw this happen with Alien Romulus. I think Alien Romulus is a really good movie. I had a great time with it, especially considering when Hollywood tries to make a new movie into a beloved franchise, it is almost always a pile of shit. It is almost always the worst thing you'll ever see, and Alien in particular, the previous film, Covenant, I thought was super poop. So I thought this had no chance of being good, and I was surprised at how good it turned out to be. But there are things about it that I can understand people not liking. It's not a perfect film by any means, it's got its flaws, but I think there's no real argument you can make that it is a bad movie. No matter how you spin it, it is a solid film. And it's a simple one too, that takes Alien back to its roots. It's not the best Alien movie by any means or anything, but it is a strong film, even in its own right, even if you don't like Alien films. It's just good. But there were a ton of people saying that it's the worst Alien movie, or it's trash, it's garbage, it's a disaster for Alien, this and that, and it makes no sense to me because that's just delusional. At worst, you could call it stale because it does a lot of things that we've seen done a ton of times, even within the Alien franchise. So I can understand people maybe not being as excited by that, but that doesn't mean that the movie itself is bad. And that's not the main criticisms or anything I was seeing. It was people literally like desperately grasping at the tiniest of straws and pulling nonsense out of their butt in order to try and justify their hatred of it, which I don't understand why. Like, you are trying to hate it. Even though it's not a bad movie, you could just say like, yeah, I didn't love it. Like, it's okay. Like, I didn't love it. Like, that makes sense to me. That falls perfectly in line with the rule of mid. You found it to be average. That's okay. You don't have to make things up to try and explain why it's actually the worst thing ever. That to me just seems so phony. That is so ridiculous to me, and it's so common too. Not loving something, like deeply loving and worshiping something, now means that you have to be like the #1 hater of it. You gotta wake up super early in the morning to hate on it with extra time to spare. It doesn't compute. I just really don't understand this fear of mid, both in terms of like liking something that's mid. Like, there are plenty of games I've played that aren't the best games, but I've still really enjoyed them, even though they're average games, and that's not a big deal. I think that's fine. There's movies I've watched, like my favorite movie, The Mummy. That movie's, that's not the best film ever made or anything. That's a pretty average film. But it's my favorite movie because it's special to me. I saw it so many times growing up, it has a really special place in my heart. And I still really like it to this day. I still have a lot of fun watching it. Overall point is, there's nothing wrong with mid. Like, I think that is totally fine. I think it's very fucking silly that everything has to be extremes of love or hate it. And nothing else. I think that's dumb. I think it's out of control. So when I call something mid, people interpret that as, oh, he hates it. He fucking hates it. No, I don't. I don't. If I hated it, I would have said I hated it. Like the Rick and Morty anime. Like Rings of Power, which I still find to be one of the most boring shows on TV right now. I know a lot of people are really liking Rings of Power. I don't know how. I think it is just so fucking boring. It's crazy. But like those are two shows I really don't like. And I'm not calling them mid. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to rant about this a little bit. That's about it. See ya.